So peace, everybody. So I'll give it about another minute or so. We'll get into the soul to soul conversation. But today, just want to have several questions. I was asked, and I said, well, I think it's important to at least establish, um, since we're talking about the energetics behind relationships, I want to talk about the pillars that relationship sits on energetically. So that's I wanted to kind of not be too long, but just cover and hit that. Greeting. So just let me know. Y'all can feel free to kind of put anything in the chat or um, let me know what city you from and give you a shout out. And so, but we'll definitely get into this. So one thing I want to establish is that relationships, as we all know, is a major factor in our lives. It holds a high percent, but 80% of our lives revolves around relationship, whether it's platonic, domestic, romantic, or whatever. So, how we navigate relationships has a direct and a very weighted impact upon our trajectory in life. So, being able to understand relationship from a wider scope and be able to make proper decisions as it aligns with you is highly important because the state of the relationships that you're in, again, is going to dictate the trajectory and the direction where you're going to go in life and have a direct impact upon your life. And depending on how often you're hitting um, misaligned relationships, it begins to really work against you. Peace. So what we want to do is just kind of get to the energetics. In other words, I want to get to the energy. What's behind the relationship? What's behind our personalities before we start interacting and mixing? What is the energy? What's the energetic? What's our inner magnets, if we'll say, that's pulling us to each other? What's the inner magic? What's repelling things away from us? What is that? What's the key? What's the engine behind that? And so that's what we're going to talk about, relationship pillars. And so a lot of us are familiar with the masculine and feminine energies, but there are three pillars, three energetic pillars that relationships are sitting upon energetically. That's the masculine energy, that's the androgynous energy, and that's the feminine energy. And so we talk about and these energies are, when we refer to energy, because I know a lot of us, we hear a lot of people say energy, energy, energy. Energy, all we're referring to is the ability to cause change and the ability to do work. And so these three different gender energies or these different forces all have an ability to create change, but they go about it doing it differently. In other words, how can I alter a situation? How do I manifest a situation? How do I influence a situation? And then the work. So based off of my exchange, my energy exchange in this particular area or in the situation or in this environment, whether it's intrapersonal or interpersonally, how does it go about doing that? So when we're talking about the energy behind relationships, this is what we're talking about. When we're talking about energy behind relationships, this is what we're referring to, and it flows through all of us. There's not one energy superior over the other. They all work together. So I like to encourage when I be doing, deep dives and workshops and coaching, is I like to use the word interplay because there requires a level of mastery and a skill set to understand these energies that's behind our persona, behind our ego, behind behind the indoctrination or the things we've been taught in terms of how we're supposed to be in a relationship. We're talking about this energetic layer and then the combination and how it interweaves behind and then influence how we act and choose and move and prefer and et cetera inside a relationship dynamic. And so these three um, primary gender energies are always at play, whether we realize it or not. So we got the masculine energy, androgynous energy, and feminine energy. And so when we talk about the masculine energy, for simplicity, just for the sake of today, that's the energy that revolves around structure, right? Initiating, uh, communicating, protecting, just for basics. That's giving us a basic understanding about the masculine energy. And of course, there's many different checkpoints that fall up under. And then when we talk about the androgynous, we're talking about the ability to be adaptable, flexible, balance, right? Um, balance, truth based, um, purposeful, okay, intentional. That's the androgynous aspect, all right? And then also a harmonizer, being able to bridge and bring to things together and keep things circular and functional, okay? And then when we talk about the feminine, we're talking about creativity, supportive, nurturing, right? Being mindful of how it exudes its energy, so it conserves. And then we're talking about in terms of it uh, expresses itself through relationship. Okay, so and there's many different things to get more in detail. You definitely can join me on Patreon, Living Soul, and kind of just subscribe and tap in on the membership and get more information on that. So the masculine, androgynous, and feminine energy pretty much operates in these lanes. So it goes about creating change. So the masculine will go about creating change from a structural understanding, or like a lot of us know, outward. So the androgynous, the masculine will go by structure, then the androgynous will go by the integrative piece, and then the feminine will go about being creative. So these three different gender energies exercise its power differently, or its way. I won't say power. Let me back up. So exercise its ability to create change. Okay, so the masculine will seek to create change through force. The androgynous will seek to create change through integrating. Okay, and the feminine will try to create change through, um, excuse me, through creativity slash power. So we got power, integrating, and force. Okay, and so with force is the masculine. It wants to outwardly create the force. It might even go against the grain. It's like, well, we need to do this. The masculine, well, we're going to push through despite what the current setting and environment is. We're going to push through it. The androgynous will seek to find everything that's connected and integrated. Okay. So the androgynous will, in terms of its way to create change, it's going to do it the most peaceful way. It's the path of least resistance. It's actually the midpoint, or that sinuous line in between that yin yang symbol. Okay. And then the feminine is going to go by the power basis, which, in other words, it's going to look at the inner dynamics of things. It's going to be mindful of the emotional makeup, the morale, the how things get along. Okay. In between all these different things. And so what it does is it stimulates that and it operates from that way. So this is why when we look at how it operates, making these changes, it creates change, it goes through those different modes. Okay. So those are the basic energetic pillars that a relationship sits upon. When we talk about a relationship, one way to define relationship is it means natural association. When we look at the word natural, it means it's energetic. So relationship is more about energetic association. So energy perceives reality. So there's a high degree and a high level of skill set or awareness or mindfulness to understand what is the energetic association. So how do we associate energetically? And how we associate energetically is going to be measured in how we energetically mesh and flow with the masculine energy, with the androgynous energy or the feminine energy. And then we start to understand how it meshes and flows there. It will take what we say different positions. Okay. So the masculine energy can take on three different positions. It could take on a dominant position, a neutral position, or a submissive position. Same thing with the androgynous energy. It can take on a dominant position, neutral position, or a submissive position. In the feminine as well, it can take on a dominant position, neutral position, or submissive position. And so how it operates and choose to work in a dynamic is also going to be dictated in terms of the position that it takes. So a lot of people talk about submission, but someone can be in submission without something being in dominance, and something can't be in dominance without a submission. And then also, if one gets to extreme or the other, then you need something that's going to be able to neutralize or harmonize it, and that's the neutral. Okay, and so the relationships dance in and out of this all the time in different theaters in life, in different arenas in life. And so when y'all see me doing the soul conversations, and we're highlighting certain, celebrities, or I'm doing readings for certain individual relationships, and we're talking about the energetics as they commingle and flow, and what the setting can be that dictate where the outcome relationship is going to be, endurance wise, what their cognitive compatibility might be, or what their resilience might be, and so forth. It comes all from understanding these energetic pillars and how they work and how they fabric, how they weave within inside the social dynamic, um, within inside of the relationship activity that's kind of going on. And so when we talk about the different positions, the dominant position, the neutral position, or the submissive position, that's basically saying the dominance is showing the aspect of assertiveness. When do you apply assertiveness? Are you more prone to apply assertiveness inside a relationship dynamic? Is that what you really prefer? Is that the position? Is that the power position? Or, what I'm saying, is that the position you want to be to cause change or to direct where it wants to go? Um, or are you more of a harmonizer? You know, is that the position you rather take inside a relationship or in this particular situations that's going on in life, right? You might be in one area of life, you might want to be dominant, but then another area you might want to be more neutral, more in the harmonizing state. And then other areas in life you might want to be more submissive. In other words, let's say with finances, you might want to be a harmonizer, you might want to be neutral, but your person you're in a relationship with doesn't mind being a dominant. Then vice versa, it might be in the area of wellness and health. You might want to be more in a submissive position there, where someone else might be more in a neutral harmonizing position. So there's different areas in life where you'll take on these different positions in relation to the gender energy we mentioned between the masculine, androgynous, and feminine. So you might be like, okay, if I'm in finances and I'm more in an androgynous alignment, that means I'm more adaptable to the leading and guiding of the masculine, say, per se. Or if I'm in an androgynous position, I might be more adaptable to the creative direction that the feminine might bring. Okay. And so this is referred to the interplay. It plays in and out in the different situations that commands and demands for it to respond in a certain way. Action. Okay. And so when we talk about relationship, we're talking about mutual interests that's connected by natural association that actively mirrors inner qualities. So that lets you realize that relationships sits upon fundamentally upon these basic things that to focus on. That's a unified mission, that's mutual interest, that is energetic interplay, that's active mirroring and resonance. And so ironically, when you sit down, a lot of people, when they're talking about their relationship, when you try to take them to the process to see the mirroring aspect of them, a lot of times they don't want that. When you really try to get them to understand what is their unified mission, typically that's not really there. And so I want to say this because typically, and especially in the traditional sense if one person knows their mission, that's not everyone inside that relationship needs to understand what their mission is, because that way it enables you to make the proper choice if you blend and commingle, right? So the woman needs to know her mission, and then the man needs to understand the mission, or the woman needs to know her mission, and the other woman needs to know the mission, or the man needs a mission, or whatever type of relationship you're functioning in. Mission, unified mission, is still there. It's still required. And so if you don't have the unified mission, which that connects to your personal soul purpose. So if you don't really know that, you don't really qualify quite yet to initiate a high level of intentional relationship, because you're going against the energetic grain of what a relationship really is: mutual interest. You can't have mutual interest if you don't really have the purpose. The interest you might have will be very fleeting and will wane very quickly as time goes. But if you're looking for something to be more enduring and lasting, there has to be a connection. There has to be a joint purpose. That's the unity factor: joint purpose, joint moral, and joint discipline. That's the tri-web for unity. So if you don't have that, it's not going to hold very long. Okay. And then all this is still, it piggies off of the relationship energetic pillars: the masculine, androgynous, and feminine, and how they take position between the dominant, neutral, and submissive. And it just all begins to work, and it just continues to move in and out. But what gives it direction, right? What gives it structure, what gives it an ability to manifest, is the ability for us to know how to work and weave in and out of these different things. So that's the energetic interplay that I'm explaining. And so then when you're in a relationship, you have to be, do you see yourself in your lover? And does your lover see yourself inside them? So I'm going to tell you, if you don't, as soon as you stop and it gets blurry to see yourself inside your lover, your mirroring is switched. You're no longer reflecting. You're now are deflecting. Okay. And so that happens a lot of times. Sometimes people like, we were a strong relationship and we were flowing very well. The image changed somewhere because you're no longer mirroring. The mirroring factor is off. That's a law. It's a law of reflection. That's the principle of correspondence. So the things I'm talking about are not just theory, and talk about things that's coming from a universal based source. And so that's what's very important. So when I mentioned about the unified mission, that's dealing with the principle of care, and that's dealing with the principle of cause and effect. I cannot have this certain effect if I don't have a collective aligned cause. The direction of relationship is not going to follow in the direction of the effects that, or the outcomes that I desire to anticipate, that I see for us. Vision connects to mission. Okay. And so when we don't have that, it gets misaligned. So even people that want to demand more of a traditional sense, well, you got to follow my lead, then you are more required to have what? A vision, something to model, so that way your partner can what? Work around it and what? Become mutual with it. But then, even then, they have to mirror. They have to see themselves inside that vision as their own. On a very basic level, this is why we have children. Children are a mirror of the two individuals that created the child. It represents what? A union that took place, whether you're still unified or not. It occurred. There was a syncing that occurred that birthed a child. We might afterwards get disgusted and whatever, but it's still there. That mirror is still there. So the child becomes what? A mirroring factor. Okay. And then you have resonance, the ability to what? To not just be attracted, but an ability to what? To stay connected. Right. So attraction is the draw, but the resonance is the connection. And so relationships is based upon this. And so when you start talking about resonance, now that comes down to the interpersonal or the inner maintenance of you and I. What virtues versus vices do I regularly cultivate? In a certain relationship mix, what virtue comes out, or what vice or vices comes out? Well, I mention virtue and vice because those are powers. And so if when we come together, I become more patient. There's certain outcomes that will come from that. But if we come together, I'm more volatile. There's certain outcomes that really come from that. And it will show in the direction of the relationship. So whether you might know your mission, you need to also understand your resonance. What do you truly resonate with? Sometimes we hear popular say what trauma bonding. A lot of people at a certain age, like, well, we got together, and they start doing reflective work, and they start to realize like it was a trauma bond, right? Or something that's very sustainable, and you see there's a level of harmonization that they hold and possess with each other through the different changes that go through the relationships. When they go through the different phases of the deep bonding phases and stuff like that, instead of them becoming more scattered from each other, more diverted, they become more together. And then they also become more inverted. See, the thing about the lasting long spec of the relationship, it coincides with y'all's ability to be more invertedly aligned. In other words, more inward alignment. So that means that they'll spend more time and share and exchange. That's energy. Exchange, it begins to root y'all more at the soul level versus the outward acquisitions or the outward representations or the social validation that seems to be the thing that drives relationships on a very surface level. But at the end of the day it's going to be that inner rooting inside each other. How do you root inside your lover? How does your lover root inside you? And then from that root, how do y'all grow from the exchange of the roots together? In that growth, what comes from that? In that growth, what is produced? What's the leaves from that rooting that y'all have together that can benefit a larger whole? Or for yourselves, does it give you a nice shade for y'all to enjoy each other? Or does the shade fades and then you're exposed to a lot of different things on the outside that you really don't want that the shade would protect you from? And so this is where we're talking about the relationship dynamics, the energy pillars. And so how we align. So when we come together, when we combine, it creates an energy field. In other words, I say energy is what? The ability to what? Cause change. So together, what we manifest together, what change do we call? And as we go about doing that, what gender energies are we predominantly operating up under? Is it a masculine together? Is it the androgynous together? Is it the feminine together? Or is it a combination of masculine and feminine, or androgynous feminine, or androgynous masculine? What is that? And then how do we align with that? In positioning, the dominant, the neutral, or the submissive. How's all that playing? Because it's going to lead to outcomes. It's going to generate outcomes. It's going to spark us whether we're going to maintain certain things or we're going to eliminate certain things inside the relationship. So everything really revolves around these energetic, I'm sorry, so someone said, do the attraction and resonance equal the unified purpose? Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the attraction is just the draw, but the resonance, so let me clarify. So when we talk about that unified purpose, you want the resonance more than the attraction. You can be attracted and it can kind of shift and fade, but you need that resonance because the resonance, you're still at home with it. So when you talk about unified purpose, you want to be unified. The attraction plays because you might be attracted by recognizing in reflection, in mirroring what that mission is. So it brings you in, it attracts. But the question is, how long will you stay? Or will you stay? Or will you find a home inside what attracted you there? And so that is when the resonance come into play. So it's one thing to be attracted, but the thing is, do you resonate with what you're attracted to? Because you might not be. You might be very attracted to it. You might float around it. You might explore it. But are you rooted? As I was saying earlier, are you rooted into it? When you're rooted into it, we're talking about that resonance. Okay. And so based upon that, it's going to dictate also energetically how structure is provided around that mission, how creativity is around that mission to help grow and to help it expand. This is why I cringe when people, we hear now most narrators like, I'm not adding anything to it. It's like, what are you in a relationship for? It's a flow, it's an interplay. If we want this outcome, I got to provide the structure right here, right? And then I got this aspect where I got to make sure that things stay balanced. So I got to tap into that, the androgynous piece. And then I got an aspect to keep it growing, to keep it vibrant, to keep life in it. I got to have the creativity. So if you are trying to be in a relationship and you are disinterested in what the mission of someone has or what the vision is, you're already going to have an off-center relationship. I don't care what you're hearing all out here, all like that. And half people's advice and stuff ain't been inside an intentional relationship for longer than 2 years anyways. Okay. Oh, you're welcome, love. And so it's an interplay, and we're all going to dance in and out of different roles. This is why you got to make sure we don't get too pigeonholed into certain roles, because you might be more energetically aligned in a different role versus what traditional role is trying to have you in. Then there might be certain areas where you need to be in a certain, say, a leading role versus a supportive role if y'all want the best effect or the best outcome. Not just because you're a man or just because you're a woman. That doesn't even make energetic sense. And this is why we see the failure rates in relationships being high. The failure rates in relationships are what they are because whether we want to admit it or not, we're aligning with a knowledge base that yields that result. So we're going to have to take the venture and think outside the box. But the thing is we could think outside the box, but we also have a source. That's why I talk about the universal principles and laws, because despite how I think or you think or my opinion, they're going to operate no matter what. So if we can sit there and look at those and influence our understanding to reshape some glitches in our thinking, because obviously we have glitches because the failure rate is high. That means we're more likely entertaining directly or indirectly a knowledge base. We're consuming the wrong thing in our relationships if we find ourselves not being able to stay in a level of unity with our love interest that we share that mutual intention with. Now, for a lot of people, they become a little scary and start talking like that because now you're no longer trying to grab these outer forms for your assurance, like so you can penalize somebody for not being able to comply to what you have. That's not love. Love is very fluid. Love is measuring what we're willing to give without expecting anything. Love is being able to rectify when things get off course and not hold that against each other because something got off course. Love is willing to be unionized and harmonized with each other. Love is willing to endure and be resilient when the throes in life is coming at it and challenging it. And you're not going to retreat. You're just going to become more together. But it's hard to do that when you don't have a unified mission. It's hard to do that when you don't understand your mirroring. It's hard to unite with someone if you don't see yourself inside them. This is why abuse exists. Abuse exists because I'm willing, or either I inner harm myself, so it's easy for me to harm you, or I don't see you as a counter. I don't see you as a mirror. This one is be very. That's why I cringe. I don't like using the word submission in terms of a woman to man relation like that. Now, if I say submission, I'm talking about the position in a certain scenario, but not a role. Because when you put the role, you take the humanity out of it in most cases. People can argue all you want, but that's what's happening. You are a doormat to me. You're lower than me, and that's not true. That's not it. And so it's more likely, a lot of times people deal with abusive relationships. What begins to happen is they don't see the humanity in that person. Nevertheless, they don't see the humanity inside themselves. And so it's easier to act out that way because there's something off with the mirroring. So mirroring is one of the things you got to focus on. Okay. I didn't mean to shift there, but I guess somebody need to hear that is listening to that. So I hope you got it. But it's really about how do we blend. It's like cooking a good meal. There's several ingredients that creates a taste, a flavor profile that we all want to enjoy together. And that's what we're trying to do in our relationships. We're trying to relate, right, continually, and then house it. Relating is based upon how often that we can agree over our disagreements. But there's way more agreements than disagreements. And when we disagree, do we have the resilience? In other words, the androgynous piece, the adaptability piece, or the neutral position to sit here and rectify and create enough space to allow this disagreement to dissipate so that way it doesn't become a future issue in the future. We allow enough time between our interactions. That way, what we are agreeing upon doesn't get disrupted in what rhythm? That's feminine. In the direction that is going continually, that's masculine. This is how the interplay continues to move and operate. Okay. So I just wanted to drop that today for soul to soul conversations to connect, to give y'all some basic of the basis of the relationship pillars, and to understand when I am talking about relationships from an energetic point of view and kind of giving that take when I'm looking at the living soul numerology profile and kind of bring out certain these scores and stuff, you kind of get a little more of a gist and understand as a reference. So if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do that, and also hit things so you get the notifications when I hit you up. Also, if you want to get more intimate information and want to be more aligned, you find what I'm sharing to be intriguing and know more about it. First of all, we just dropped a book, and it's called, you know, and the book is called, I have one book called Relationship Battery, and you want to get that. And then the other book that I have is called Activate Your Lover, Relating in Resonance. Okay. And then I have another book. It's called See Your Lover. Ladies, also have an audio album. It's about how does he show up for you. So it takes you through. So there's a lot of different insight information that you will gain inside a library by becoming a part of being a member inside my Patreon. So you can just Google Patreon and put Living Soul, and you'll see, Living Soul with Satori Seals, and you can rock. And we have like a membership level for like $7, a month. You kind of get in and get access to a lot of library. If you want to get more into the, more in depth, more information, and more range of kind of getting coaching, and just getting a little more guidance for certain things, then join our Audio Soul Sanctuary membership, which is $19.99. So thank y'all in advance for, chiming on that, because it allows me to be able to bring more information to touch different lives. As many of y'all know, I travel around, the country, frequently. And so we're just bringing out this level of understanding and outreach, to help improve ourselves. Also, just to let y'all know, Wisdom Therapeutics Herbal Therapy, Herbal Brand, we have a effective multivitamin. Wisdomamin is actually on special. So they're sponsoring behind this. And so you can subscribe and get it. You get a family size bottle. As you see, this is a big bottle. It's like 4 ounces for your family. So you can have that in every quarter. You can get it renewed and have it on plan. So the link will be available once off this live, for the Wisdomamin. So you can get that. But you'll find all the information by doing that. Join our email network. That'll be in the link. And also, like I said, again, join us on Patreon. Patreon Living Soul, and you'll be able to get plugged into the energy readings that we do weekly. Also, we provide a tool for you to understand what the energy is going to be like for the week. This is all based upon these energy pillars I was talking about today. How the week will be. It's like having a forecast, like a weather forecast, but we understand what the energy forecast will be in relation to your personal soul numbers. We have that to help you. We provide like a dashboard, and we meet together as a group to kind of go over that. So that way we're moving and I like to use analogy like the leaf floating with the wind, and that way we're able to manifest and move in a very productive and a more efficient way without feeling scattered, or off or feel like we're blindsided by what's coming on in life. It doesn't have to feel like that. So I appreciate everybody chiming in. Share this. Um, Let me know what's going on in the comments, and appreciate me see if there's anybody right here before I clock out. Okay, that's what's up. So all of y'all, hey, one love and be at ease. Peace.